Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Streamline English. I hope you are having a peaceful day. Find a soft, quiet place and let yourself settle. Breathe in slowly and gently out. Tonight's story is about one of the greatest mathematical minds the ancient world produced. A man whose discoveries we still use today, more than 2,000 years later. You don't need to understand every word. Just listen and let the wonder of his story come to you. Did you know that more than 2,000 years ago, one mathematician figured out a remarkably accurate value for pi, the mathematical constant that relates a circle's circumference to its diameter, without any modern tools, using only geometry and careful reasoning? Did you know that this same man figured out the mathematics of the lever and famously declared that if someone gave him a long enough lever and a place to stand, he could move the earth itself? And did you know that he is said to have discovered one of the most important principles in all of physics while stepping into a bathtub, and was so excited that he ran through the streets without his clothes on, shouting, "Eureka," which means, "I have found it." Whether every detail of that last story is literally true, we cannot be certain, but it captures something deeply real about the man. A person so passionately in love with discovery, so intoxicated by the thrill of understanding, that the world around him, including on that occasion his own clothing, simply ceased to matter. His name was Archimedes. He lived in ancient Greece more than 2,000 years ago, and he is one of the greatest thinkers who ever lived. If you enjoy learning English through wonderful true stories like this, please subscribe to Streamline English. It helps us keep these calm stories coming. Thank you, my friend. Our story begins in the 3rd century BC, around 287 BC, in the city of Syracuse, on the island of Sicily, which was then part of the Greek world. Sicily is the large triangular island at the very tip of the Italian peninsula, in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. Archimedes was born there, and he spent most of his life there. Not much is known about the details of his personal life, and the accounts that survive come mostly from other ancient writers who lived later. But what we know, without any doubt, is this: his mathematical and scientific work was extraordinary, some of it so advanced that it would not be equaled or surpassed for more than 1,000 years after his death. As a young man, Archimedes studied in the great city of Alexandria in Egypt, the city founded by Alexander the Great, which had become the intellectual capital of the ancient world, home to the famous Library of Alexandria, where scholars gathered from across the known world. There, Archimedes was in the company of some of the finest mathematical minds of his age, and he absorbed the best mathematical knowledge his era had to offer. Then, he returned to Syracuse, and he spent the rest of his life there, thinking, calculating, and making discoveries that would change the history of science and mathematics. He was, by all accounts, a man so devoted to his work that he would forget to eat, forget to sleep, and draw geometric figures in the dust or the ashes or the oil on his skin whenever a thought struck him. He lived inside his mind, and what a mind it was. One of Archimedes' most important contributions to science was his work on levers. A lever is a simple machine, a rigid bar that pivots on a fixed point called a fulcrum, used to lift or move things with less force than would otherwise be needed. You use a lever every time you open a bottle cap, pry open a box lid, or use a simple seesaw. The principle seems obvious. A long enough stick placed over a rock can be used to lift a heavy stone. But Archimedes was the first to work out the mathematics of how levers work, the precise relationship between the length of each arm, the position of the fulcrum, and the force required to lift a given weight. He understood this so completely and was so impressed by its power that he made one of the most famous boasts in the history of science. "Give me a place to stand on, and I will move the earth." He meant it mathematically. If you had a lever long enough, with a fulcrum in the right place, you could theoretically lift anything, even a planet. The mathematics was correct. The practical realization was, of course, impossible. But the underlying principle was true and profound. This understanding of leverage has applications everywhere in engineering and technology, from the simplest hand tools to the most complex machines. Every time a machine multiplies force, every time a small effort lifts a large weight, the mathematics of Archimedes is at work. Another great achievement of Archimedes was his work on the mathematical constant we call pi, written as the Greek letter pi. Pi is the ratio of a circle's circumference, its outer edge measured all the way around, to its diameter, the straight line across its widest point. No matter how large or small a circle is, this ratio is always the same, and that ratio is what we call pi. Its value is approximately 3.14159, and the digits after the decimal point go on forever without repeating. Archimedes could not calculate pi to many decimal places because he did not have our modern mathematics, but he devised a brilliant method to approximate it. That is, to find a value very close to the true value, even if not exactly equal. His method involved drawing polygons, many-sided flat shapes, both inside and outside a circle, and calculating their perimeters. By using polygons with more and more sides, getting closer and closer to the true circle, he could squeeze the value of pi between two numbers, a number that was too small and a number that was too large, and keep narrowing the gap. Using this method, he calculated that pi was somewhere between 3 and 1071 and 3 1/7, which gives a value extremely close to the true value of pi. For a man with only geometric tools and no modern calculation aids, it was a stunning achievement. Pi is one of the most important mathematical constants in existence. It appears in equations that describe circles, waves, probability, and much more. Every time a scientist or engineer calculates something involving circles or curves, pi is there. And the first serious attempt to calculate it accurately was made by Archimedes in ancient Greece, with a stick and his extraordinary mind. Now for the most famous story about Archimedes, the one that everyone has heard, and that may or may not be entirely true in its details, but that captures something genuinely real about the man. According to the ancient account, the king of Syracuse had a problem. He had given a craftsman a quantity of gold to make a royal crown, but when the crown was returned, the king suspected that the craftsman had dishonestly kept some of the gold and mixed in cheaper silver instead, to make the crown the right weight. The king wanted to know if his suspicion was correct, but how could he test this without melting the crown down? He gave the problem to Archimedes, and Archimedes puzzled over it. Gold and silver have different densities. Density means how much mass is packed into a given volume, or how heavy a material is for its size. Gold is much denser than silver. A lump of pure gold is heavier than a lump of the same size made of silver. So if the craftsman had replaced some gold with silver, the crown would have a slightly different density than pure gold. But how do you measure the density of an irregularly shaped crown? The answer came to Archimedes, as the famous story goes, while he was stepping into his bathtub. He noticed that as he lowered himself into the water, the level of the water in the bath rose. The water was being displaced, pushed aside by his body, and he suddenly realized the volume of water displaced is exactly equal to the volume of the object submerged. And if you know the volume of the crown and you weigh it, you can calculate its density and compare it to pure gold. The story says that Archimedes was so struck by this insight that he leaped out of the tub and ran through the streets of Syracuse, unclothed, in his excitement, shouting, "Eureka! Eureka! I have found it! I have found it!" Whether he really ran naked through the streets, we cannot say for certain. The principle he discovered, however, is completely real. We call it Archimedes' principle, or the principle of buoyancy. Buoyancy is the upward force that a fluid, like water, exerts on an object immersed in it, which is why things seem lighter in water and why boats float. It is one of the fundamental principles of physics, used in naval engineering, hydrodynamics, and many other fields to this very day. Archimedes was not only a theorist, a person who develops abstract ideas, he was also a gifted engineer, a person who applies scientific knowledge to build practical machines and solve real-world problems. And the most dramatic proof of this came when his city, Syracuse, came under attack by the Roman Republic, which was at that time expanding its power across the Mediterranean. Rome sent a large fleet and army to besiege Syracuse. To besiege means to surround a city with an army and try to force it to surrender, cutting off its supplies and attacking its walls. Archimedes, called upon to help defend his city, designed a series of war machines of remarkable cleverness and ingenuity. He designed improved catapults, war machines that could throw large stones or other projectiles at attackers, of greater range and accuracy than those previously known. He is said to have designed a great crane, a machine for lifting heavy objects that could reach over the walls and grab Roman ships, lifting them by their prows and shaking them so violently that the soldiers inside fell into the sea before dropping or capsizing the ships. Whether all the accounts of his machines are entirely accurate, historians debate. But the Roman general besieging Syracuse was reportedly so frustrated and awed by Archimedes' defenses that he refused to attack directly and opted for a long siege instead. It is said that the Romans were so afraid of Archimedes that whenever anything unusual appeared over the city walls, a rope, a beam, any device, the soldiers would cry out in panic and flee, convinced that Archimedes had invented some new terrible weapon. Eventually, after a long siege, Syracuse did fall to Rome, and Archimedes, absorbed in working on a mathematical problem, drawing circles in the dust, by some accounts, did not hear the soldiers coming. A Roman soldier who encountered him ordered him to come with him. Archimedes, focused entirely on his mathematics, said something like, "Don't disturb my circles," and the soldier, in anger or impatience, killed him. It was a tragic end to one of the greatest minds of the ancient world. He died as he had lived, thinking about mathematics. The story of Archimedes teaches us many things. First, it teaches us about the sheer joy of discovery. The Eureka story, whether literally true or not, captures something real about what it feels like to have a great insight, that flash of sudden clarity, when everything falls into place, can feel so enormous and so wonderful that you want to shout it to the world. Archimedes loved ideas with his whole heart, and that love drove him to some of the most extraordinary thinking in human history. Second, it teaches us about the power of patient, careful reasoning. Archimedes didn't have calculators or computers. He had his mind, his geometric tools, and his extraordinary ability to think through a problem from first principles, from the very beginning, building up his understanding step by step. His method of calculating pi, squeezing closer and closer to the truth with each step, is a beautiful model of patient, careful thinking. And third, It reminds us that ideas have lives far longer than the people who discover them. Archimedes lived and died more than 2,000 years ago, but his mathematics, his principle of buoyancy, his work on levers, these things are still taught in schools around the world, still used by engineers, still shaping the way we understand the physical world. His ideas outlived him by thousands of years, and they will continue to outlive us all. The greatest thinkers give the world gifts that last far beyond their own short time. An idea, once discovered, belongs to all of time. So tonight, before you rest, let me leave you with this thought. Archimedes loved to understand things. He was not satisfied with simply seeing that a lever works. He needed to know why, and how much, and with exactly what mathematical precision. That deep curiosity, that love of understanding rather than just knowing, is what made him one of the greatest minds in history. And that same curiosity is at the heart of learning a language, not just memorizing words, but wondering why a sentence works the way it does, noticing patterns, asking questions, letting yourself be surprised and delighted when something clicks into place. That is your own small Eureka moment. Those moments happen for every learner, again and again, and they are wonderful. So stay curious, my friend. Ask the questions, notice the patterns, and when understanding suddenly arrives, shout Eureka if you like. You have earned it. If this story delighted you, please give it a like and subscribe to Streamline English. It truly helps us grow. And tell me in the comments, which ancient scientist or inventor would you like me to tell you about next? Until next time, my friend, keep wondering, keep discovering, and have a wonderful day.